Okay, this is Johnny.
Incredibly
to
topical
Cellos.
hot button
Johnny
episode
to
focused
Cellos.
on Debate Bro podcasters, ice, and Christi Noem shooting puppies. And honestly, this thing was non-stop gags and biting commentary. I really felt like most of the way through, this was just another incredibly strong episode, but boy, did it have a weird, abrupt ending. There is tons to go over with this one, as per usual, so let's dive into Season 27, Episode 2, Gotta Nut. And hey, if you like this breakdown, not only am I going to cover every episode of the new season, but I have a ton of South Park episode, character, and lore breakdowns.
Well, should we watch Christi Noem's clip before or after? We can watch it after.
Across the channel, so consider subscribing. Thanks. Okay, so South Park Studios opted to take 2 weeks for their second episode of the season after their premiere made such huge waves, and while the episode overall was really strong, I'm really surprised that they landed on this ending with that extra production time. But you can also see how much of that extra time went into the production value, because they had some amazing looking locations and sequences. The episode starts with the boys complaining about somebody making inflammatory remarks on their debating podcast about women, Jews, etc., clearly alluding to Cartman before the show reveals that it's actually Clyde. The entire school seems to be up in arms, and fittingly they have Wendy and Kyle confront Clyde to complain.
Well, that sounds like a very female and Jew thing to say. If you guys don't like it, why don't you come debate me on my podcast?
This follows up the previous episode's Cartman storyline pretty directly, where he felt very lost given how much of the world is more or less repeating his shtick these days. He no longer feels special, and that's exactly how he's feeling.
But I'm the one who said woke is dead.
Here, seeing Clyde take his place as the offensive provocateur who's getting all the attention for it. Particularly the attention of Kyle, might I add. One of the things that sets Cartman off is hearing Kyle call Clyde a fat ass. There's almost like a jealousy here. This leads to Cartman basically playing catch up with people like Clyde to adopt these debate bro tactics to try and stay relevant, even though Clyde has ripped Cartman's talking points and just repackaged them.
And also be sure to hashtag
you know
respect
what,
Clyde's
too?
authority.
This actually, and this feels like what is happening right now in the right wing, not just, like the manosphere, but just in the right wing content sphere, where there is infighting happening. And it's because there have been more and more people who have tried to get in on this, right? They see the dollar signs, they see the formula, and they're like, okay, I want to get in on it. And the girls are fighting for sure. Yes. And they're starting to eat each other. They're turning inwards, and it's kind of it's like pointing fingers and trying to be like, no, don't, this person's a fucking idiot. Okay. And then a bunch of other slurs, rather than it being like, well, there's room for all of us to have our different styles and our different ways of pushing what we think is best here. Yeah, fascism eating itself, calling each other feminists as slurs.
What?
So Clyde and Cartman are obviously parodying this specific type of debate bro, a tactic we've seen used pretty heavily for years now, and the episode does not really hold back when it comes to how it feels about these specific types of personalities and influencers. Clyde is basically hawking protein supplement to make money, and he fully states that the only reason he's even doing any of this is to make money, or the way he puts it, because he's got a nut, which is about $60 a week, might I add. In his conversation with Mackie, he seems to have absolutely no real connection or belief in the ideology he's pushing. It's actually a pretty simple formula. Bring people on the podcast to debate, edit the content to be as incendiary as possible, meant to infuriate and divide, get eyeballs on that content through that division, and make money. And I'm sure you've come across this kind of debate bro content before on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Interestingly, they make Cartman the Charlie Kirk stand-in here, and I think that was pretty intentional. Charlie Kirk is another one of these right-wing political commentators, and while he does use debate bro tactics like this, he also absolutely believes in the ideology he peddles, just like Cartman does, so this is pretty fitting. But as usual,
I have to say too, I think ultimately, look, maybe Charlie Kirk really thinks that Cartman, maybe he's missing the satire, but also maybe it's just feeding his ego to be the guy, right? There's so many guys that South Park could have chosen to be, who Cartman is modeled after. And so the fact that it's Charlie, I think he fucking loves it. He doesn't give a shit, ultimately, maybe, that Cartman is a fucking idiot, that Cartman is not like the good guy in the show. Or maybe he knows it's making fun of him and he's leaning into it. I don't think he has like a good sense of humor or anything. Could have been Tim Pool. No one would have blinked an eye. Well, what was I going to say? There really has been a lot of infighting, it feels, in the last year, right? Tim Pool being revealed to be a Russian asset, the Elon Musk versus Donald Trump showdown, the trad wives versus the MAGA hotties. I know at the very least he wants his audience to believe that makes him the shit, control the narrative type beat. Yeah. Where he's like, I'm the guy. I think he knows if he acts mad about it that he's owned, so if he laughs about it, then he wins. Maybe. I mean, could be any of the above.
Well, the show is not making Cartman out to be a good guy here, obviously. They fully spell out for the audience exactly what he's doing to find success in this format.
I have my arguments down rock solid. These young college girls are totally unprepared, so I can just destroy them and also edit out all the ones that actually argue back well.
I like that this season seems to really be leaning into a good mix of actual political commentary and like incredibly stupid juvenile humor. Obviously, last week it felt like all of the Trump's tiny junk stuff was very intentionally trying to get a rise out of him, but this week the whole master debating bit was just clear juvenile wordplay, and I can't pretend it didn't make me laugh.
I'm sorry, Mom. You told me to go to sleep, but I started master debating again.
But the other major piece of political and cultural commentary here was obviously the focus on ICE. Early in the episode, Mackie gets fired due to the far-reaching budget cuts in education across the country, and despite it completely conflicting with his principles, in order to make ends meet, Mackie decides to join ICE. South Park has obviously covered ICE before. Back in season 23's Mexican Joker, their detainment camps were a major focus, but with the recent insane inflation of their budget and the fact that they are actively carrying out raids across major US cities in ways that have been highly publicized and criticized, it makes sense that South Park would tackle them again, and they definitely do not hold back in their portrayal of ICE either.
If you're crazy or fat and lazy, we don't care at all!
Obviously, first off here, they're just incredibly critical of their hiring practices and lack of meaningful screening protocols. It was pretty funny to see that World of Warcraft guy return for the first time since like season 20 to represent their low standards here. And it does feel like their standards just keep lowering. In fact, literally
They're gonna have to throw Dean Cain in there.
Yesterday, Secretary of Homeland Security Christi Noem announced that they no longer have age limits in their recruiting for ICE.
They removed the age limits so that Dean Cain could enlist to be ICE. Yeah, no, actually though. So that motherfucking Dean Cain, in such a, truly just definitionally ironic, considering who he is most famous for playing. Dean Cain wanting to join ICE, but there being age limits, and now the age limit's being removed.
Enforcement position.
Hey, now your racist dad can sign up to volunteer and be ICE.
And we'll get to Christi Noem soon, because they definitely covered Christi Noem in this episode. But also, South Park has just fully been dunking on Homeland Security. Okay, so here's a sentence that really perfectly exemplifies that we probably live in the dumbest timeline. On Tuesday, South Park ratioed Homeland Security on Twitter. Yeah, that's a real sentence. That's a thing that happened. The official Department of Homeland Security Twitter, the agency of the United States government, shared an image of South Park's ICE agents on their page, and South Park responded with this quote tweet. Wait, so we are relevant?
Holy
Hashtag eat a
shit.
bag of dicks.
Almost 500,000 likes, 15 million views.
Quote tweet nearly 10x'd Homeland Security and was obviously in reference to the White House's assertion that South Park hadn't been relevant in 20 years. And obviously South Park was not subtle in their criticism of ICE in this episode either. They portray one of the raids as taking place at a live Dora the Explorer stage show. It's just a bunch of families enjoying children's entertainment, and ICE shows up to detain, deport, and rip these families apart. And South Park's message here is pretty clear that ICE is not just targeting the quote-unquote worst of the worst as their Secretary of Homeland Security claims they are. And if families watching Dora the Explorer wasn't subtle enough for that message, the next raid makes it pretty unambiguous.
I have no doubt that there are many, many Latinos in heaven.
Yeah, ICE rolls up on heaven. Again, not very subtle, but absolutely and obviously scathing. They are flat out saying that ICE's goals are to deport as many people as possible, no matter the context of their life or quality of their character, even if they are literally in heaven.
Remember, only detain the brown ones.
And this episode is not kind to Christi Noem either, nor should it be. They took aim at her in two specific ways, outside of her being this bizarre ICE mascot. But the first was in response to something she wrote about in her memoir.
God, at the end they go to Mar-a-Lago and they portray all the workers there as being young and giving massages to all the old men there. Well,
Maybe one of the most bizarre political moves I've ever heard of in my life. She detailed how she shot one of her hunting dogs because it wouldn't behave. Like, she wrote this story.
Remember how fucking insane this was? That Christi Noem admitted herself.
I have
Like,
no doubt.
that was not something that someone spilled the tea on. That was fully Christi Noem being like, oh yeah, when my dog is no longer, when my hunting dog is worthless, then I just shoot him. I just put him down. Like, this woman is evil. Christi shoots Crypto at the end of the episode. Oh my God. All right, here's the South Park heaven scene. We can watch this
There
one.
are many, many Latinos in heaven.
I mean, you know, the thing is, too, like, one thing about Donald Trump and the Donald Trump era is that there's always been like a difficulty in satirizing Trump because Trump is so absurd. You know, it's difficult to use absurdist humor to, like, depict the absurdity of Donald Trump. And it's why SNL and, like, a lot of liberal comedy just kind of has failed. You know, it's not worked because they just are not effectively. They're not effectively out ridiculousing Donald Trump with just the type of person that he is, you know, and all the shit that he does. Like, he's too absurd to be satirized with absurdity. Like, the way that he acts on television, it's hard to outdo him on TV. And I think it's why South Park leaning into the juvenile humor is one way that they can, it's like the way that only something like South Park can make fun of Donald Trump. Yeah, they don't feel shame. They can also react quickly. Yeah.
Jesus, look out!
Jesus, look out!
How did you get into heaven?
Jeez. They're depicting Jesus as brown.
about her life as though it was an anecdote that made her relatable. She basically failed to train a dog so disastrously that she opted to murder it. And so, as you might expect, South Park shows Christi Noem killing like 5 puppies over the course of this episode, including Crypto. Hope Soup doesn't find out. There's also this whole body horror subplot where Noem's face keeps melting and trying to escape her body, only for this group of stylists to come and touch her up as often as needed, which I feel like...
And also, like, the gag of Christi Noem just killing a bunch of puppies is a like, it's a funny gag that is of itself like ludicrous, not even just, you know, being funny because it's satirizing how evil Christi Noem is. Like, the image of someone who is just going after and aggressively shooting puppies is so insane. But also, yeah, I mean, Christi Noem kills dogs.
Like, is not just ripping on Noem, but also commentary on the way that they're basically trying to give these kinds of government agencies marketing facelifts, make them look shiny and appealing. Cartman's story sort of just dissolves in this one, though in a pretty funny way. He loses the Charlie Kirk Award for master debating to Clyde, who wins a trip to Mar-a-Lago. I really liked how fully fed up Leanne was with all of this. I feel like over the past few seasons, we've been seeing her become more and more fed up with Eric's antics, and it's nice to see that character evolution. She used to sort of just be the yes mom archetype. And similar to Clyde, Mackie ends up being such a good ICE agent, despite not even believing in the work he's doing, that he ends up being honored by the president at Mar-a-Lago to become the new face of ICE. Honestly, while I did really think the ICE commentary was well handled here, from a story perspective, the idea of them wanting to make Mackie the face of ICE felt a little silly to me. I mean, this guy's face? Though I guess when your vice president is JD Vance, it's all relative, right? Okay, let's talk about this entire Mar-a-Lago sequence. First of all, insanely gorgeous location for South Park. Between this and Heaven, it feels like we can really see where the work goes when they have that extra week to produce the show. But damn, I kind of felt like this location was a little bit wasted. I think they definitely wanted to prioritize getting more Trump content in this one after the premiere landed the way it did, and after the White House's furious response. And honestly, they fit a lot of stuff into this short 5 minutes that they spent in Mar-a-Lago. There was some super obvious, non-subtle stuff that people are definitely going to talk about on social media. All the Saddam Trump stuff again, this time joined by this little Oompa Loompa ass JD Vance who offers to do the lubing for him and Satan. Honestly, pretty spot on characterization for our vice president. Just major minion energy from that dude.
There's also lube guy through. There's also like, there's just no way that South Park does not go fucking ham on the Jeffrey Epstein shit, because it is so absurd. It's so laughably absurd the way that Donald Trump and his cronies are so clearly trying to cover shit up. And I know that they sort of include it, but I just mean, like, I think they're going to be going into it even more.
Through. But I actually think the more damning commentary in the Mar-a-Lago sequence is everything they showed happening
all
there.
The couches
Obviously,
at
they made
Mar-a-Lago
brief mention of Trump's relation to the Epstein files in the season premiere, but South Park's portrayal of Mar-a-Lago was, did anyone else think it was a little Epstein-y? All of the people who worked there were pretty young-looking girls, and Mackie keeps walking in on them massaging old men, not looking enthused about it. And I guess if that wasn't subtle enough, he also walks in on Dora the Explorer giving an old man a massage. Now, obviously, this is somebody in a Dora costume, but come on. I think the implication here is clear. That is a child character giving an old man a massage. Not to mention that this is one of the first things Trump says when they get there.
Mar-a-Lago is for everyone that's got a nut.
As I mentioned, though, the end of this episode is...
the tiny JD Vance. The tiny ass
very
JD Vance.
Strange. Mackie fleeing Trump leads to a very clear emotional climax as he finds Clyde, and we get bookended counseling sessions between the two of them, tying the messages of their stories together. Mackie basically spells out that betraying your actual beliefs and principles in order to make a bag is only going to lead to sadness, basically stating that his experience with ICE and Clyde's...
Yeah, I also wonder if they're gonna do anything with Netanyahu. If they're going to do anything Israel related.
Debate Bro podcast grift are very similar circumstances, and I think it's a good ending emotionally, and then the rest of the ending happens. Honestly, this entire Mar-a-Lago sequence felt to me like it could have been its own episode, and it seemed like they had enough ideas packed into those 5 minutes, and such a different tone in those 5 minutes, that they could have done like a horror-y Escape from Mar-a-Lago type episode. They portray it as this incredibly creepy location. The way Mackie keeps walking in on these gross massages reminds me a lot of the dog costume moment in The Shining. And then obviously they seem to be doing this whole The Thing type monster subplot with Christi Noem's melting face. Good body horror stuff. They even showed it latch onto one of the other ICE agents, but then in the next scene, he just kind of brings it back to her. No consequences to what seemed like a genuine horror parody sequence. Not to mention, we see Mackie and Clyde go to the plane, but we don't ever see the plane leave.
You have to hear, this is the voice that they did for JD Vance.
What is it fantasy, Buff? Hey, will you get out of here? What is it fantasy, Buff? Hey, will you get out of here? What is it fantasy, Buff? Hey, will you get out of here?
And of course, fucking JD Vance tries to be like, I made it. I'm on South Park. I made it.
What?
It's JD. Everyone hates you. Okay, like actually, everyone hates you. I know you won. I know you're vice president. I know you're gunning to be president. You know, I wouldn't put it. I honestly would not put it past him killing Trump. Which, on one hand, but also President JD Vance, horrible. But yeah, no, JD Vance, like everyone hates you. Everyone. Nobody likes you, buddy.
The island. Instead, it just shows this absolutely bizarre Peanuts parody ending. And honestly, I feel like this could have worked as an ending. Really, all I feel like they needed to do was add a shot of the plane flying away from Mar-a-Lago over the Peanuts whistling. I think that would have gone a really long way to make it feel like an ending, to make it feel less abrupt and confusing. I honestly felt like I was missing something when it ended, like I just didn't understand what I had seen. But the reality is that the emotional story really ended at the Mackie and Clyde scene. I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt this ending beat was a little off. Matt and Trey definitely love their Peanuts homages. This isn't the first time they've used one, but this very much had the vibe of, we don't really know how to end this, which is a shame because it kind of left me with a confused feeling after what was otherwise just a very funny episode filled with some great biting commentary. Though I will say, as much as I am appreciating that the show is fully taking aim at a lot of things that deserve to be satirized and
like,
other things that really should be illuminated, I hope the show does get back to using the main boys in the next episode. Obviously, we got a lot of Cartman here, but almost no Kyle, Stan, or Kenny throughout the first 2 episodes of the season. Though, it also appears like we're gonna have to wait another 2 weeks for the next episode. It really seems like South Park is running season 27 on a 2-week production cycle for each episode. During the broadcast, they advertised that next Wednesday, August 13th, is South Park Day to celebrate the 28-year anniversary of the series premiere. And they're doing that with a day-long marathon that's supposedly leading up to an airing of the pilot, but there was no mention of the new episode that should be airing that day as well, so I don't think we should be expecting that there's going to be a new episode next week. We're probably getting episode 3 on August 20th, and if they maintain that 2-week schedule,
Bro, hello. Do you think it's okay to share this? Some people in Arab will decapitate you, and I love you. Okay, so this is like really not normal behavior. Okay, no, you can't do this emote and think it's all good. This is crazy. This is genuinely, there's so many levels of wrong here. There's so many levels of wrong. No, it's not engagement bait, and I'm gonna kick you up, but what the fuck? Like, that's one of the, it's not engagement bait because I'm just sitting here being like, what the fuck? This is insane. Good engagement bait? Question mark? No. I think there's people who will just say the wildest shit out of left field. Completely the wildest shit out of left field not even pertaining to what we're talking about, and then confuse that with like, oh, but I baited ya. I got ya. Engagement bait is cope. They just don't want to feel stupid for getting called out. Yeah, I really do think I think chatters like that, they don't recognize that what they said was fucking wild and not in a way that even makes any sense. Like there's no sense to it. Shits my own pants. Got you. I got you. Also, please don't don't say that and then be like, I love you. Don't add that on top of it. I don't want you to love me. I definitely don't love you.
Park won't be airing its season finale until sometime in November, which is kind of crazy. It's a really strange production plan, and I'm curious if fans are going to lose patience at all waiting 2 weeks per episode. Personally, I think if the episodes make a big enough splash, people will get over it, but they really need to deliver. And I feel like this week's weird ending left me a tad disappointed since we know they took an extra week to produce the episode. Like they really couldn't figure out this ending even though they had a whole extra week. Though, if we do continue to get more really cool new locations like Mar-a-Lago in this one, that will be a benefit for sure. Overall, this was
I will say too, actually,
pretty good follow-up to that monumental premiere. It was really strong for most of the runtime, but just ended in such a bizarre way, and I'm curious how that colored other people's experiences with the episode. I'm sure many clips will still be shared across social media. There's plenty of great images and hilarious social commentary here, and I expect they'll follow up in 2 weeks with something equally biting. But what did y'all think of the episode?
What I would say too is for liberals who may be confusing season 27 so far is like South Park are on our side. Like we're all together on this. No, don't ever delude yourself into thinking that Stone and Parker are on any side here. They literally say we are not on anybody's fucking side. And I think that should show you, though, how fucking crazy this timeline is. How, like, everything that's happening in American politics is so freaking wackadoodle-doo. It's so absurd that, of course, this is what South Park then is going to tackle, you know? But yeah, South Park has always had, they've always had this kind of real, cynical nihilism. They don't stand for anything. They don't, they are not self-serious. They are not looking to like change people's minds. They are not looking to, they're not looking to do like commentary in the form of reaching towards progress, Okay, so here was Christi Noem's response.
Just constantly, yeah, it never ends, but it's so lazy to just constantly make fun of women for how they look. Only the liberals and the extremists do that. If they wanted to.
Okay, so Christi Noem says only liberals and extremists make fun of women for how they look. So does that mean that Donald Trump is that she's calling him a liberal or an extremist? Because when it comes to making fun of how women look no further than Donald Trump. What are we even talking about? Also, yeah, all of a sudden, Miss Feminist. Miss Feminist over here who's like, you know what? If you want to criticize me for my political beliefs, for the actions that I'm taking, sure, go ahead. But simply making fun of how I look, which again, she does not understand South Park. She does not understand South Park. And she also doesn't understand like why they were depicting her fucking face sliding off her body and needing to be put back on. Yeah. Suddenly, Christi Noem cares about how we talk about women's looks.
Criticize my job, go ahead and do that, but clearly they can't. They just pick something petty like that.
No, they were doing that too. Did you not see the scene where you were up in heaven arresting brown people in heaven? Did you miss that one? What? Also, it's not just Donald Trump. MAGA famously loves, like the right loves to mock how liberals look. Where do you think the blue-haired SJW, all that mockery started? That's all they do. They are all about just making fun of people because their actual politics are so empty, because they don't stand for anything legitimate. So they love to make fun of the way that people, women, look. I know they don't care. No. I know they don't care, and I point out repeatedly that they don't give a shit about hypocrisy. Okay, and often like cruelty being the point. No, I am well aware that they don't care, but I still cannot not point out how just unbelievably ridiculous it is to be like, only liberals and extremists make fun of women for the way that they look.